Pen tool. Hi guys, today we'll talk about the pen tool. This is also a vector graphics tool, and if you master it well, it will also be very easy for you to work in softwares such as Illustrator or CorelDRAW, because this tool is also presented in these softwares, and it works exactly the same as in Photoshop. Therefore, you get such an additional bonus by studying this tool. With the pen tool, you can create complex vector shapes of absolutely any configuration. And now you see examples of works that were created with the pen tool. And it's not as difficult as it seems. But with a pen, you can not only draw. The pen is also a universal selection tool. You can select even those objects whose edges are blurred, as well as the objects and the backgrounds are the same color, or for example a mottled object which is located on a mottled background. Sometimes it is simply impossible to make such selection with other tools. For example, it is possible to create a selected area on a black and white photo only with the pen tool and nothing else. Let's start by looking at exactly how we can create paths using the pen tool. After all, it is the paths that are the basis for both drawn objects and selected areas. Let's move on to the pen tool. It is located here. It looks like a feather. We choose the very first, the topmost option, and try to create a certain path. It is very simple. You put the first point, choose a place for the second, put the second, third, fourth, and so on. And if the object which you are drawing assumes straight lines, then everything is quite simple. For example, we are now drawing something like a Christmas tree. When you need to draw a strictly horizontal or strictly vertical line, you need to press Shift and continue to draw. Well, we press it again to make a vertical line, horizontal, vertical, horizontal, and close our path. That's the Christmas tree we got. It's a little bit crooked, but we can always correct our Christmas tree if we take the direct selection tool and, for example, select these points with the Shift key pressed. And using the arrow keys on the keyboard, we'll put them in this way. I'll fix this vertex too. And so we get a Christmas tree picture. By the way, I drew lines at a custom angle, but it can also be drawn with a Shift key pressed. Look, if I set the direction of the line, then I draw it at 45 degrees, just like that. On the example of a Christmas tree, we created a closed path. In this case, the last point coincides with the first, and the path closes. But sometimes it happens that it is necessary to create an open path. There is one nuance here. For example, you draw something using the pen tool, and now you have already put the last point, and you don't need to continue. You need to make a break, for example, in this path. But if you click again, the line will appear again. So, in order to make a gap so that the path is not closed, you need to hold down Ctrl and click anywhere. After that, the pen seems to detach from the path that you have created. And you can draw another one, for example, like this. Again, press Ctrl and click anywhere. The path has been broken off. And we can create another one, for example, like this. Well, we have drawn the mountains in the background. It's such a childish drawing. But suppose we want to make our drawing more complex and create curved lines so that we get a Christmas tree like this. Let's activate the path of our Christmas tree with a white arrow. Let's move on to the pen tool and pay attention. When we point it to the path, a plus icon appears by itself, which allows us to edit another point. Edit it, and immediately we can move it somehow. We can pull these lines and change the shape of our point, or rather, change the shape of our line located between 2 points. Or we can just take the white arrow tool and do the following. I point it to another contour. In the same way, the plus icon appears. I switch to the white arrow. You can do this by switching between the A and P keys. That is, the pen is the English letter P and the arrow is the letter A, and I get a white arrow. So I move the point where I want. Then I press the letter P. I have a pen again. I point it to the path. I have a plus icon. I put a dot. Press A and move this dot to the place I need. If you want to delete some point, you need to take the pen tool again. I will bring the pen to the point and not to the line, and then I will have a minus icon. And this way I will be able to delete this point, like that. Let's get it back, and let's edit some more curved lines to our Christmas tree. There is another way to switch between the pen and the white arrow. For example, I bring the pen to a point, press Ctrl, and it turns into a white arrow. I can move this point somehow. Look, I have a pen. I bring it to a point, press Ctrl, it changes to an arrow. I move the point, bring it, press Ctrl, move it. And if you bring the pen to a sharp corner and hold Alt at the same time, then the cursor icon will change to a corner, and you'll be able to pull this line, and you'll have a round line. That is, look, we bring the cursor to the corner, press Alt. We change the cursor image to a corner, and we can make an angle. If suddenly you don't have a plus or minus icon, please note that the optimization should be enabled. If there is no check mark here, then when we bring the pen to a point or path, we don't switch to the plus sign or minus sign. Therefore, it is better to have this check mark enabled. But of course, this is not the only way to draw curved lines. You can take the pen tool and draw the curved line at once. For example, I put the first point, put the second point, and without releasing the left mouse button, pull my hand to the right, and the line is curved. Then I put the second point, or rather probably the third, and initially it is sharp. But if I want to make a smooth curved arc, then I, without releasing the mouse button, pull to the right, and I get a line like this. I put another point. Without releasing the left mouse button, I pull to the right, and I get a point like this again. Well, if I just put a point and then another one again, I get sharp corners again. Using these simple techniques, you can draw a path of absolutely any configuration. Let's try to remove the path now. We can select it with a black arrow and press delete. The white arrow is also suitable for this, but then delete will have to be pressed twice. And if you need to remove several paths, then you can do this and press delete. I draw attention to the fact that all the paths we created are displayed in the path palette, and it is organized similarly to the layers palette. Let's now go to the layers palette and select our Christmas tree using the arrow tool. Let's go to the pen tool and look at the top menu. Let's choose the shape option. Click and look, I have a new layer with a shape. That is, our Christmas tree has turned into a shape. If we turn on the background now, we will see that we have a Christmas tree. To change its color, click on the icon twice. Select the green color and click OK. And we got such a green Christmas tree. In principle, we could immediately start drawing it using the shape option, and then we would have something like this. I'm going to draw a very small Christmas tree now, so that it won't take too long. Well, something like that. But as you can see, it's quite inconvenient, because immediately we fill the figure with color, and it's not very convenient when you are forming its shape. Therefore, we can put no fill and start drawing, like that. In this case, we will have just a path, either the top or the Christmas tree. After that, we can change the fill to the one we need. And this is what we'll get as a result. As a homework assignment, you can draw the same simple Christmas tree as I drew. But if you want something more, then I offer you a sample. Each new element of this Christmas tree is drawn according to the same principle that we have studied today. I suggest you work in the shape mode without filling, and then add the fill that you need. I hope you enjoy working with the pen. Of course, such illustrations are usually created in vector graphics software, but if you can't work in them, then you can also do a lot in Photoshop. Let's continue to consider the pen tool, and we will talk about how you can use a pen as a selection tool. Let's say we need to select this tube of cream, and of course you probably noticed that its edges are completely indistinct in some places, and it will be very difficult to select it with other tools. Therefore, in such cases, the pen tool will help us. We take the pen tool. You can simply press P on the keyboard and start selecting. First, we need to pay attention that we have a path mode turned on. After that, we zoom in our image and start selecting. In fact, we need to circle the object that we select. And so, for example, let's start with the lid. I put the first point, then, after a while, the second point. Then I pull my hand a little to the left, until the path lies exactly along the path of my object, and I put the following point, like that. In general, you don't need to strive to put too many points. In principle, as a rule, 3 points are enough to select an object. Then we put a point somewhere here. For example, that's the most blurry section. That is, I put a point all the time, and then I just pull my hand a little to the left, without releasing the left mouse button. Here you can just put a point, and not pull your hand anywhere, because we have almost an acute angle. Then we put another point, pull out our hand to the right, and put another point. And so, gradually, we select our entire object. At first glance, it may not seem too easy, but you'll get used to it very quickly and learn how to do it just with a light movement of your hand. So, we are coming to the very end. We put a point here. If it is inconvenient for you to select just like me, You can do it the way we did with the Christmas tree. That is, draw straight path, then edit points and create curved lines. So the path is closed. And we can see it, because all the anchor points have become blue. And now we need to create a selected area. There are 3 ways to do this. The first one is to click on this button, which we have in the menu, and we'll have a selection formed. Click, and as you can see, we have a window in which we can set the furring radius. And in this case, the edges of our selected area will be blurred, but we already know what it is. This is all the same as with all the selection tools. Cancel. The next way is to go to the path palette and click on this icon. After that, we'll have a selection. Let's cancel for now and see the third way. You need to right-click somewhere inside the path and choose Select an Area. By the way, in the same way, we can fill or make a stroke or the path. We'll talk about this later. So we select our area. We leave the furring radius 0 because we don't need to furring it somehow. Click OK. And that's it. Now we can take our cream and transfer it to some other file. Let's do it. So I added it here. Let's reduce it. And I got such an advertisement for the cream. In principle, if you look closely, you can see that it would be possible to select a little closer to the lid itself, so that there wouldn't be this black stripe. This could also be done if you used the white arrow, selected the points and changed the trajectory of the bottom line. And if we had chosen a blurred radius, then in this case the edges of the cream would have been a little blurred, and perhaps it would even be better in this situation. But let's go to our cream again. If we look at the path palette, we have a working path that we have preserved, and if we click on it, then it will load again, and we can edit it somehow if we wish. Well, first of course, we have to select it with an arrow. For example, I click like that arrow, and the path is selected. And if we switch to pen mode, then in addition to the selections and shape that are already familiar to us, we'll also see the mask button. Click on it and we get a vector mask, just like in the case when we used standard shapes. Let's create a layer below the cream layer. I press Ctrl and click on the layer icon. Let's fill it, for example. That's what we get. Everything here is exactly the same as with the shape tool. I'm just reminding you of this possibility. Let's talk now about the fill and stroke that we can apply using the pen tool. For example, I would like to change the color of the girl's eyes. I take the pen tool and make a stroke like this. I create a path in the path mode. Everything is exactly the same as we did earlier when we selected the cream. I put a point, I pull my hand a little to the left, put the next point, pull my hand a little to the right and up. And if there is a need for this, then you can take the white arrow tool and move it like that. Create a new layer. I press the right mouse button and select to fill the path, and here I can choose the color and opacity of this path. Let's choose some color. By the way, you can also fill in with pattern here. It can also be quite interesting. Let's choose a color and click OK, and I got this. If you're suddenly hindered by the lines of the path itself, then you can press Ctrl+H and it will disappear. That is, it will not disappear altogether. It is there. It continued to exist here in this path palette, but it has disappeared from our visibility zone. And now I will change the layer blending mode. Well, you see how you can change the color of the eye in such an uncomplicated way. Well, let's leave it like this, or like that. So, well, let's choose darken. I got such an interesting color. Also, you can slightly reduce the intensity and choose the shade that you like best. This is exactly what I meant when I said that it is quite difficult to select anything in black and white photos without using a pen. And now let's see what can be done with a stroke tool. Creating a new layer, and we draw a curved line like this with the pen tool in path mode. Again, nothing new. We just create a custom path and adjust it using a white arrow. That's how we got the path. Now press the right mouse button and select stroke path, and here we have a lot of opportunities for further work. We can choose any of the presented tools. Well, of course, we will not consider everything because it will take a lot of time, but I think you can experiment, and it really can be very interesting. Let's choose the brush. I had already selected a brush. That's the stroke I got. Look, I have a brush represented by such a dotted line, and it has created a line like this. And again, we can press Ctrl+H and remove our path so that it doesn't interfere. This is our line. You can move it here. For example, do something else. And if you suddenly need to change its trajectory again, then you press Ctrl+H and it reappears where it was. That is, now I have moved only the stroke, and the line itself remains where it was. And if I now take the brush tool and increase its size, I had 50 pixels. And I will go back to the pen tool, right mouse button and select stroke path. Okay, I've got such a wider stroke. Ctrl plus H and I remove the path, so that it won't interfere. So I made it on the same layer, so it doesn't move. It would be better, of course, to make each stroke in a new layer, and then you could move these two lines completely independently of each other. And let's see what you can do with the pen tool. For example, you could draw custom shape. Let's do it on a new layer now. Well, something like this. I don't know, that'll be some kind of unusual star, which we draw ourselves. And we can first, let's say, fill the path. And then we can click Define Custom Shape. And thus, we'll have a new shape that we can use in the future. Okay, we go into Custom Shapes. Here is a Custom Shape tool. And at the very bottom, here is our star. That is, if we want, we can use it in the future. Just click on it and let's say start drawing many more such stars. I'll probably remove the stars. It doesn't really fit in this design, but I think that in general everything is clear to you. I also want to make a small addition about stroke and pressure of the brush. Firstly, before choosing a stroke, you always need to set a brush first. Let's take the simplest brush in this case. Well, a soft round, for example. I will create a new layer, and for example, I will draw some kind of line again. Something like this. By the way, the points may extend beyond your canvas. It's nothing to worry about. It's okay. And I choose stroke path again. And this time I put a check mark to simulate pressure. Okay, and look what happened. It seems as if I drew this line with my hand. And at the very beginning I had very weak pressure. Then in the middle of the line it became stronger and decreased towards to the end of this line. And in this way you can even create an imitation of manual graphics using the pen tool. That is, enter some paths using the pen tool and set them a stroke with an imitation of pressure, and it will feel as if you have drawn a sketch. For example, on a tablet, I have slightly reduced the opacity of the last line, and I want to draw attention to the fact that creating a selected area and a stroke applies not only to the paths that we're creating using the pen tool, but also to the tools of the shape group that we went through before. Let's see how it works. I have already taken a tool called a custom shape. Now I will use it to draw a blank for our selected area. I will take this option, which is called a mosaic, and draw something like this. And now we are creating a selected area. In this lesson, we have already seen that you can create a selected area by using the selection menu, by clicking the icon in the path palette, and by clicking the right mouse button. And there is also the possibility of creating a selected path using keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus Enter. This is the fourth way, and perhaps it will seem to you the most convenient. So I press the Ctrl plus Enter, and I have a selected area. After that, I press the keyboard shortcut Ctrl plus J. You could do something else with it, but you can do that. And I put, for example, multiply mode, and I get this effect. You can reduce the opacity. You can edit a mask, for example, and somehow work with it again. I hope you still remember about the mask tool. I'm going to take a gradient and do probably like this, and I will get this effect. Well, there is a lot more to experiment with, a lot to come up with. I hope that you'll be able to show your imagination and create some interesting effect. It is not necessary to repeat what I did. The main thing is that you use the tools and techniques that are shown in the lesson, and that you use these tools in your tasks. And now let's move on to the homework. The first homework assignment will be to create a selected area from a path and to transfer the cream to this image here. The second task will be to practice with the fill and stroke and create something like that. And the third homework will be to create a selected area with shape tools, or you can try to use it in some other way, in combination, for example with fill and stroke. That's all for today. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.